All right, welcome everyone. See a couple people are starting to join in. If anyone wants to let me know if they can hear me all right, would appreciate it. Thanks, Steven. For those of you just joining on in, you are in the right place. If you're looking for the Firegang webinar, we're going to go get started here in just a couple minutes. So sit tight and we'll go ahead and get into it. All right, guys, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, thank you everybody for joining in for the webinar tonight. There's a lot of things that you could be doing right now, but I appreciate you showing up for this webinar. Today we're going to take a look at turning your practice phone calls into new patient appointments. There is a chat box as well. If you're joining in from a computer, feel free to use that to ask questions along the way. I've got it open to the side and I'll be happy to go ahead and answer any questions as they come up if you have anything. I'll also have a Q&A at the end and we can go ahead and address any of that at that time. But this is the Firegang Dental Marketing Workshop. Today we're going to dive deep into phone calls, office training, staff, and how you can do a better job with your staff of turning those phone calls into new patient appointments. Or if you're a member of the staff and that's why you're joining in tonight, we'll have some very clear actionable items that you can use to implement tomorrow to learn better how to answer those phone calls, turn more of those opportunities into actual booked appointments. So if you are a dentist joining in tonight, one question I just want you to think about as we're going through this is, what is your biggest struggle as you try to attract new patients right now? And maybe for some of you guys, the reason you're on tonight is because you feel like your phones are the biggest struggle and you feel like you've got a good website, or maybe you get some good marketing in place, but it seems like you're missing a lot of opportunities at the phone call. And maybe for some of you, you're just not really sure where the biggest struggle is, but it just feels like you're kind of just struggling on all cylinders here and trying to figure out what's the right move to make. So for a lot of the ones that I hear, it comes down to, spending a ton of money on marketing and getting nothing out of it. Or I've been burned by several marketing companies in the past, so I really need to be careful about what I do next. Some other struggles I hear is like, I like my website and I think it's great, but our new patient numbers are down. And I hear these struggles more and more and more over the last several weeks that I've been talking to different dentists, especially those who are looking to kind of make 2019 a little bit stronger than 2018 was. All of these can be addressed with effective marketing. But when it comes to effective marketing, we want to look at the whole spectrum of what marketing is. And marketing is often much bigger than just any one individual piece. Today, we're going to focus on the phones, which will kind of pull everything together, but we'll talk about a few other things as well and how we can overcome some of these challenges, some of these struggles as we go through it today. At Firegang, really what our goal is to help you bridge your new patient gap. So you've got this awesome guy who's jumping from one side to the other, but basically what we like to say is wherever you are now and wherever you'd like to be, whatever the difference is between those 2 points is your new patient gap. Let's say that you're seeing 10 new patients a month right now. You wished you were seeing 30 new patients a month, because if you were at that point, you'd be able to hire an associate who could relieve you of some of the day-to-day bread and butter stuff, and you could focus more on the services that you love. So you've got to figure out, how can we get those additional 20 new patients every month? For others, it's going to be different. Everybody's going to have their own number. But my goal today is to help with one piece of this larger struggle to get you guys where you want to go and bridge that gap. So who am I? My name is Ryan Manaccio. I'm the marketing manager here at Firegang. And I have worked with many, many dentists over the last couple of years, and I've spent $100,000 on dental marketing initiatives. I've built countless amounts of dental marketing campaigns for different kinds of practices all across the nation, single location practices, startups, multi-location practices, 5-location practices, 10, 20, and more, to take a look at how we could help them bridge their new patient gap. I've really been able to identify what works, what doesn't work specifically for dentists by really analyzing the psychology behind how new patients search for a dentist online, what they want to see, what they don't want to see, how they're going to interact with a website, or how they're going to interact with your staff. And I've helped dentists generate thousands of leads, leading to new patients and sustainable growth. More recently, I've worked a lot more with phones and really being able to identify what it makes a strong phone call, what makes a strong office staff person. I've done some secret shopping. I've done plenty of analysis. Our team has done a ton of analysis with new patient phone calls for our clients. In fact, we actually audited over 65,000 new patient phone calls last year from our clients. And when you have that big of a data set, you can really start to identify the trends for who's doing a great job and who's got some area for opportunity. So we're going to get into a lot of that later. We've written 3 dental marketing books, and they're all on Amazon. 2 of them are bestsellers, and hopefully the 3rd one will continue to grow like the other 2 have. Lots of great feedback from doctors, just given some great reviews on Amazon. Basically, this book is, all 3 of these books are a take on how to get new dental patients using the internet, how to grow your practice online, how to make sense of all this digital marketing, and bring it all into a single work, a single book with layman's terms, easy to understand, easy to follow. If you haven't had a chance, I would definitely recommend picking up Grow Your Practice Online, which is the 2018 version. It's been updated for all the newest, latest, and greatest strategies that we're seeing work every single day. Firegang, who are we? We are the premier dental marketing company in North America based on results. And when I say results, what I mean is that we are entirely focused on how can we drive revenue and how can we get more new patients for dental practices. There's a lot of other marketing companies out there that are more interested in leads or clicks or just designing a website. But what we really want to look at is what's going to drive that end result. And that's why we spend so much time also looking at the phones, because it's absolutely essential to have a practice that's able to convert on the phones. If you just can't bring a new patient in at that point, then kind of all the money is spent on marketing to get them on the phone. It was wasted. Our clients on average experience a 58% growth in new patients within 12 months. Because we're able to take this holistic system and implement it for these practices, the growth that they see is much better on average than other marketing companies and that they've used in the past. Obviously, it's easier to go from 10 to 20 new patients than it is to go from 100 to 200, but just on average, we see a very strong positive growth for our clients within that first year. We're one of 3 marketing companies to consult for the ADA. We flew our CEO out to really just learn more about what we're doing and what's working in this space. And we spend millions of dollars a year studying new patient behavior, testing what works, again, understanding the psychology behind how new patients choose a dentist. So everything that we do is based around this idea of the new patient buying cycle. And as you can see here, it's got 3 primary stages. So really how this flows is going to be true for any kind of patient, really any kind of consumer. If I'm looking for a local plumber, a local lawyer, whatever it is, I'm going to kind of go through the same process. And it's no different for how potential new patients would choose a new dentist. So on the front end, people are going to start their search somewhere. Some people might already know exactly what they need and they're going to search with something more specific. And so this might be somebody going to Google and typing in something like dental implants near me. But others might have no idea what they're looking for. So they're going to start their search with something more general. And maybe it's, I have a chipped tooth, what do I do? Something like that, right? But either way, they're going to start their search for a new dentist online most of the time, or offline, right? If they go and talk to their friend, ask them for a dentist, they're starting a search in some way. But what we see today is that no matter where they start their search, 99% of people are going to end up on your website to do research about you before they ever call your practice, contact you in any way. So what we say here is that after they search for you, a conversion needs to take place. After they learn that you even exist, they have to be compelled enough that they actually want to research you further. And so step 2, they're going to go to your website. And then at that point, another conversion has to take place. They've got to read your website and like what they see to the point that they're willing to give you a call. And that's where this 3rd step happens, where they call your office, and that last conversion needs to take place, where instead of just being a person on the other end of that phone call, they become a booked appointment for the practice. And so we're going to focus a lot on this 3rd component today, but it's important to understand the full system here, because this is some of the questions that we're asking as we move people through this buying cycle. When they're at the beginning, where they're searching for a new dentist, you know, are you listed at the top of Google? Are you, is it easy to find you in there? Do you have reviews? Are they good reviews that are being promoted through Google? Do you have any special offers? Do you say you're open right now? And all these different kinds of things, right? So if you're not even showing up in Google, if you're not even visible, then kind of none of the rest of this matters, because first we got to focus on getting you visible. The second point, once they do click to your website, people are asking things like, do I like your website? Do you look like a legit business? Do you answer my questions? Is there any reason I should call you versus the guy down the street, right? Like, what reasons do I have to do business with you? Does your website work on my phone? Is it click to call? Is it easy to contact you? All these things have to go right before they're ever going to call your office. The cool thing that happens when you get these first 2 pieces right, though, is it actually makes it easier for the staff, because if you've got great reviews, if your website is excellent, then that person's already kind of ready to come in before they ever contact your office. But then, of course, the last step, we need to be asking questions like, do you answer your phones? Does your front staff know what to say to get me in the door? So again, we're going to focus mostly on this 3rd piece here, but really any good marketing strategy that's going to help you bridge your new patient gap and get you where you want to go needs to include all 3 of these components. So my goal for this workshop today, though, more specifically, is that I want you to understand that, 1, the only way for you to significantly grow your dental practice is through a comprehensive dental marketing system that's built on that new patient buying cycle. Just fixing your phones in a vacuum is not going to dramatically increase the number of new patients you see. It is only one part of this process, though it is a very, very important part. So if you can't find yourself in Google, if you're not visible, if your website is 10 years old and it doesn't work on phones, definitely consider looking through some of our other content or joining another webinar to learn more about that, so you can kind of get all 3 of these components figured out. But the second more important thing here is that the only way to succeed with this comprehensive marketing system like this is if you can nail phones with the Firegang call conversion formula. So we're going to talk about that today, how it works. I'm going to give you some very clear, actionable insights that we learned from auditing those 65,000 calls last year. Before we get into that, I just want to share one quick example. This was a client that started with us last year, and they started in June, and by August, they were struggling. We're not getting as many new patients as we would have liked to have seen. And so we did some auditing, did some digging, and what you can see here is that in August, their call conversion rate was at about, it was, I think, like 16%, it was like 15 or 16%, meaning that about 1 in 7 calls that came into the practice that was a new patient opportunity was actually booked into a new patient. So there's no marketing in the world that can help you be successful if that's the kind of call conversion rate that you've experienced. So we got them started on our call conversion coaching, our training system, and the number steadily rose over time. Obviously in November, you see there was 100% call conversion rate. They, it's not like that's month after month that they're turning every single opportunity into an appointment, but it just so happened that in November, it was 100%, which is amazing, with a situation where every opportunity was actually turned into a booked appointment. So what would it do for you? What would it do for your staff and your practice if you could get your conversion rate to 100%? I'm sure it would be very, very impactful. But the strategies that these guys use, the strategies that we taught them and what we teach every other practice are the very same ones that we're going to be talking about today. So let's get into it. What is the call conversion formula that works? There's a couple of different strategies we can use here, but secret number one is building rapport. And it's interesting because building rapport is something that's been kind of unexpectedly lost. With any service, this is kind of dropping down a little bit. It's not as prevalent as we used to see, especially in dental offices, and it definitely surprises me. When the staff is answering the phone, they kind of have their own idea of what that job should look like and how they should interact with that potential new patient on the phone, but it's often not the kind of approach that we'd like them to be taking. Typically what this is just to answer questions, be really nice, but there's so much more that you can achieve, because being nice is not the same as getting an appointment. When someone correctly builds rapport, it will really set your practice apart from the competition and help you get more of those patients booked in, especially if they're looking around. So let's take a look at building rapport and kind of break this down. So what happens is when you can connect with that person over the phone, it's definitely a differentiator. In a lot of cases, someone might call 3 different offices that all seem kind of the same based on the website that they've seen. Maybe they all have about the same reviews, but the office staff, what they hear on the phone, the experience that they have there is the only thing in that entire experience that actually set them apart from the other 2 practices. So if you're in a situation like this and you kind of feel like everyone's kind of the same in your area, everyone's got kind of the same website, then this can be the piece that separates you and gets you more patients in the door with a higher conversion rate. You also become much more memorable. If you have a meaningful conversation with someone, they're going to remember it. And what this means is that you're saying more than just yes or no to whatever their questions are. This means asking them about their day, figuring out why they want a particular service, right? Like really understanding what they're asking for. Because in a lot of ways, it's like, nobody just wants an implant just to get an implant. There's always some kind of reason behind it, whether it's that they want to be able to, eat normally again, or maybe they want to feel like they can actually smile and they're kind of lacking confidence because of it. So your staff needs to help you solve problems, not just take calls. And the problems that you're solving are often deeper than they might seem on the surface. It's not just about getting someone in for a treatment. It's about helping them improve their confidence. When you build rapport with someone on the phone, you're also taking one step towards removing anxiety for that patient. So you might explain what it's like to be in the office, give them a glimpse of what they can expect. People are much more comfortable. They're more likely to come in when you've built that trust, when you've given them some level of comfort. So let's look at some of the specific things you can say, some of the specific things that you can do. We'll kind of look at some scripts, if you will. So strategy number 1 is ask for the patient's name. You'd be surprised at how often this does not happen. It might seem really simple, and it is simple, but when we analyze client phone calls, we find that this gets missed constantly. And one of the biggest differences between calls that were successful, the calls that converted, and those that weren't, was whether or not the staff asked for the patient's name, which is just kind of amazing, right? So you can use, additionally, you're gonna wanna use that name throughout the conversation. And that helps tremendously. Keep repeating it, make it feel very personal, like you're kind of more of a friend, not just some random person on the other line. It's simple, but it works. Let's say someone calls in and the first thing that they ask you is, how much does an implant cost? Or how much does an implant cost? What is the price on this or that? And this definitely happens quite a bit. So what you could do or what your staff could do is say, oh, it's $5,000 for a single implant, or whatever the cost is. And you answer the question, you're perfectly nice, but then at that point, the conversation just kind of ends, right? So what I'd recommend saying is something along the lines of, well, I can help you with that, but mind if I get your name first? So you've kind of deflected the question and said you're going to answer it, but you're taking a quick second to also ask them for their name. And that's going to make a huge difference. It's going to kind of bring their guard down, and it's also going to make it easier for you to become memorable, build that rapport, and start having more of a conversation instead of just answering questions with one-word answers. And that's really the goal here, to get started on the right foot. The next thing you definitely want to do, or have your staff do, is ask for a callback number. So again, very, very simple, but this rarely happens. I see way too many calls end with a new patient where the staff has no name, no callback number. And if that patient doesn't call back, then, that's a missed opportunity. I mean, let's say the patient calls in, you have a great conversation with them. In the end, they say something like, well, I'll check my schedule and I'll give you a call back later. Many times the call just ends there, right? And nothing goes forward. They never call back, and you don't get that patient in the door. So we want to put the burden of follow-up on the front desk staff. Is it more work for them? Yes, but it's not that much more work for them, and it gets results. So get their name, get their phone number immediately at the beginning of the call. This is going to set you apart from the competition, and it's also going to give you an opportunity to make sure that you get that patient in. Because you're calling them back instead of just waiting around for them to call you back. If they've called 3 other offices to get pricing and they call yours, you treat them better on the phone, and you follow up 24 hours later, they're going to be much more likely to choose you than anyone else. And oftentimes, if people are reaching out, they're looking to go with someone. They rarely are just going to do nothing if they've kind of invested in this process. So it might as well be you, and you can definitely take steps, and your staff can take steps in order to make that happen. Number 3 is offer a specific appointment time. So we definitely don't want to ask a bunch of questions that end with a yes or no answer, especially when it comes to scheduling and kind of locking an appointment down. So offering specific appointment times is very important. What you don't want to say is something like, do you want to schedule an appointment, or what works for you? Because it's way too easy for someone to just kind of dodge that and say something like, oh, I don't know, I got to check my calendar. Why don't you give me, or why don't I give you a call back later when I kind of figure that out? It happens all the time, right? People just don't necessarily want to commit at that time. We see this happen frequently. So ideally, don't ask any questions with a yes or no answer. The best course of action to take is to ask for that a specific appointment time, or kind of slowly help them pin it down. So you can immediately say something like, Dr. Minaccio has an appointment open next week on Wednesday at 10 a.m. or on Friday at 3 p.m. Which works better for you? Now you're kind of giving them something specific. Another thing that you can do is ask them, do morning or afternoon appointments work better for you? And then you can kind of nail it down from that point going forward. So if they say, hey, mornings are better than me, you're like, great, we have an opening on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Does that work for you? And then, it's simple at that point. Either it does or it doesn't. They don't, it's much stronger. And we find that when this kind of questioning is used, conversion rates go up tremendously. What we have kind of seen from this is that the patient will kind of think to themselves, well, maybe I was going to do more research. Maybe I was going to call a couple other practices, but I had a good conversation with this person on the phone. They can get me in tomorrow. They made it seem so easy. Like, why not just schedule now? And the easier you can make it too, by just kind of giving them these appointment times, the more likely they're going to be to want to just go ahead at that time. So some side-by-side comparisons. Again, after auditing these 65,000 phone calls, the data is just so clear. And I just want to kind of give more examples of how this is the case. So when you combine 2 side-by-side calls for a service such as Invisalign, if we look at a case where it didn't book, they didn't book on the phone, and we look at a case where it did book on the phone for that Invisalign appointment, just come in for a consult, 9 out of 10 times, the difference was in how well the staff member built rapport on the phone. It's that important. These are situations where the name was asked for, it was used through the whole call. They asked for a callback number. And the staff member also, who couldn't get them to book immediately on the call, would call them back the next day, 24 hours later, with that callback number, and was able to get a significant amount of those booked at that time. So it's just, again, a situation where if you build rapport with somebody on the phone, it's going to affect the conversion rate tremendously, and we see this time and time again. Quick tip: controlling the conversation is essential, right? And so when we say controlling the conversation, we mean a couple of different things here. So first and foremost, the goal is always to get the caller to schedule an appointment. So whenever you are on the phone with someone, if you're a staff member, if you're a doctor on the webinar today, if your staff is on the phone with someone, that needs to be the mindset, right? For a lot of people who answer the phone, receptionists, office managers, whatever it is, they tend to think that the goal is to be really nice and answer their questions, and that's all that they're going in to do. We want to change that mentality. And if your mindset is focused around, well, I need to figure out how I can schedule this person, it changes kind of the way you approach the call. It changes the way that you want to ask questions and what you can do to make that happen. Now, of course, if they're not a good fit for some reason, you don't have to schedule them, but for most opportunities, we want to get those scheduled in as quickly as possible. And so no matter what, guide the caller back to understanding that coming in for an appointment is the best choice that they can make. It's not about being nice, it's not about answering questions, but that is part of the call. But building rapport is kind of the best way to make this happen. So secret number 2 in this process, and that's tracking. So when you're looking at, if you're trying to improve how well your staff's converting on the phones and you want to start implementing some of the strategies that we just talked about here over the last about 15 minutes, you got to make sure that they're held accountable and that they're actually being able to implement these things and sticking with it and getting better with it over time. So tracking is essential to improving any kind of phone strategy, because what it allows you to do is identify where the breaks exist in the process, audit how well the calls are being answered, and then be able to make steps to address those issues. By tracking the calls, you can uncover where the staff's missing opportunities, come up with a plan to get it fixed. And at Firegang, we're very big on this part of the process. So some of the stuff that we're looking at is, and the first question that we're looking at is, are your calls being answered? And that's of course step 1, because if they're not being answered at all, then we need to get somebody to pick up the phone. Step 2 is, if they are being answered, then are they being converted into appointments? We can go and look that a little bit deeper and say, of those who do convert into a booked appointment, what about that call worked? And for those who didn't book an appointment, why didn't they? What was the issue? What can we do next time? So I'll go to the next slide here. So some of the questions that we're asking, we're just going to start at the top here. So are your calls being answered? Most doctors that I talk to say, yeah, my staff answer every call. We always answer the phone. It always gets picked up. But you'd be surprised. If you guys are, I'd appreciate it if you want to use the chat, if you guys want to engage a little bit, or tell me if you're implementing any kind of tracking software, like where you could actually know if your phones are being picked up or not just kind of off the top of your head, but does anybody on the webinar actually have any kind of specific tracking implemented with their phone so you can look at that kind of stuff on like a dashboard or any kind of a back end? There's a chat, but put it in there if you are. I'm curious to hear if anyone's doing anything like that. But what we find is that, after auditing those 65,000 calls last year, that on average, newer clients who had never done call tracking before, had never really set up a system for it or audited, were missing 30% of their phone calls. And I mean, completely missed. Like, they didn't even get picked up. These are ones that went to voicemail, and then these people never got called back, which is obviously a huge, huge issue. And so it might not be something that you even know is happening until you really dig in and start tracking that kind of thing. What was even worse in a lot of these cases is that for the calls that did get answered, the bulk of them, about 70% that did get answered, the staff would often, the average was about converting at about 50%, which means that out of all the legitimate opportunities, the ones that were answered, the ones that were booked, these clients on average were converting only about 1 in 3 phone calls, 1 in 3 opportunities into actual booked appointments. If your practice is anything like the average, then you might be experiencing something similar. And if you're converting 1 in 3 opportunities into new patients, obviously you're leaving a ton of money on the table. So this is something that we want to get figured out. Tracking is amazing for marketers as well, like for us when we help our clients out, because it answers the question of who's calling, where are they calling from, so we can get a sense of what kind of marketing is working as well. And I'll be able to know if Facebook ads are leading to great patients, or if it's Google ads that are working, or whatever else it is. Maybe you're running mailers, whatever else, but you can actually have legitimate tracking to know where those calls are coming from, what kind of marketing is leading to the right ROI and that kind of thing. Also, accountability is huge for this, because we find that without tracking staff, they might use a new strategy for a month, maybe 2 months, but then slip back to what is comfortable. So by having tracking in place, having the analytics in place, it's much easier to keep your staff kind of focused on making these changes, saying the right things, building rapport on the phone on a more consistent basis. At Firegang, the way that we approach this is that what we'll do is audit all the calls for our clients. We'll listen to those calls, point out where there's areas of opportunity, and we'll start with the basics. Did you ask for their name? What was the goal of the call to book an appointment? Did you get a callback number? Those kinds of things. And as we're auditing the calls, we're listening for this kind of criteria, and then providing that receptionist at a particular practice with some actionable feedback and where they can improve. We'll regularly meet with the staff to coach them on areas of opportunity, hold them accountable to it, which is awesome and really helps our clients out. And for you guys, though, with your staff, you can kind of do the same thing. And you'll definitely see the results as you hold them accountable to it. We kind of want to use a dashboard. If you've got any software that you're using now that has a dashboard where it's tracking these calls, you can see where they come from and listen to them and audit them. It's definitely something worth doing. There's some great call tracking software out there that you can get into, that you can purchase. This is CallRail. It's what we use for our clients, and I highly recommend it. And we're doing a lot of great stuff with it. But the last thing I want to kind of leave with here is, why are conversions so important, and why does this matter so much? Just to kind of hit this home just a little bit more. When we're looking at our new patient buying cycle here in those 3 stages of search to website to phone calls, you'll see on the left side of the screen there, it's saying this example of a low conversion versus an improved conversion system. So let's say we spend about $2,000 on Facebook ads and Google ads. And let's say that the cost per click is $10 on those ads. Every time someone clicks on it, it bills 10 bucks. You're going to end up with 200 site visitors, right? Just simple math that way. So if we send 200 people to the website, let's use this example here of 2 to 6%. So if we improve the website, then we go from 4 calls coming into the practice versus 12 calls coming into the practice by having a stronger website. And then furthermore, if we can improve the conversion rate on the phones from 40% to 60%, then at the end of the day, what we actually see in the practice is, instead of 1.6 new patients, we're at 7.2 new patients. And that, of course, that's just the numbers and how they come out there, but the new patient revenue is staggeringly higher. It's about 4 or 5 times as high in an improved conversion system with a much greater ROI. Didn't spend any more money, didn't just dump a ton of cash into ads, but really just focusing on conversion, we're able to get a stronger ROI. So these are the kinds of things that we're looking at Firegang for our clients. It's really about increasing conversion rate all across the board. So at this point, guys, old habits die hard. If you're a staff member on this webinar, I would definitely encourage you to work on some of the things that we've talked about today. If you're a doctor on this webinar, just understand that the old habits that your different staff members have might be kind of holding you back, and you just got to put a plan in place using some of the things that you've heard about today to improve upon that, to rework some of those habits, get some of these new scripts in place, start building rapport. So as a bonus for attending tonight, I'm going to send everybody our brand new guide. We just finished this last month, so it's brand new for 2019. It's how to turn your dental practice's phone calls into appointments. It's got a ton of great information in it. Some of the same stuff that we covered tonight, but also it has a bunch of amazing scripts in there for how to deal with different kinds of potential new patients that are on the phone. We've had practices take our scripts, like the ones in here, and put them right next to the computer so that when they're answering phones, they can just run through the scripts, and so that's helped tremendously. So I'll send this all to you guys. Feel free to use it. I would definitely encourage it. Additionally, if anyone wants to take me up on this offer, if you're at a computer watching this webinar, you've heard how this all works, and that using these strategies are the key to success of your practice. If you feel like you're missing a clear plan of action, feel like you need a custom tailored approach to your unique situation, then I do have something for you. You can go to firegang.com/call and schedule an appointment with me, what we'll do is we'll get on the phone for about 20-25 minutes, and I'll ask you some basic questions about the practice, kind of where you're at now, where you're looking to go. I'd be happy to talk to you about any of Firegang's services, from our holistic marketing services, but also if you guys need help with training your staff, you'd like to learn about how we could potentially take that over for you, and just outsource your training to us. I'd be happy to talk with you about that. We do offer that as a standalone service as well, if it's something you're interested in. But we can look at the details. Every training program is a little bit different, and we can kind of customize it for your specific situation in your practice. So if it's something you're interested in, just head over to firegang.com/call, and we can go ahead and get that set up for you. But does anybody else have any questions? Anything else you'd like to learn more about? I'd be happy to go deeper into any of these strategies. If you want to hear more about it, or any more examples, or any other questions, anything we covered tonight, there is a chat box. If you'd like to use it, be happy to sit here for a second, see if anybody has questions, but otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up for the evening. Well, all right, guys. Appreciate everybody coming out. If you want to schedule that call, just head over to firegang.com/call. But otherwise, we'll see you next time. And I hope you got something good out of this tonight. We'll be doing more webinars in the future, and we'll see you then. Thanks.